Between 1972 and 1983, the butcher baker was active in Anchorage, Alaska. At least 17 women were kidnapped, essayed, and killed by Hansen. Hansen released many of the abducted women into the forest only to hunt them down and murder them. The oldest of two children, born to American mother Edna Margaret Hansen and Danish father Christian Hansen, a local baker, Robert Hansen was born on February 15, 1939, in Estherville, Iowa. Robert worked in the bakery owned by his father. After relocating to Richmond, California in 1942, the family moved back to Pocahontas, Iowa in 1949. During his early years, Hansen struggled with shyness, stuttering, and terrible acne that left him permanently scarred. He was characterized as a reclusive introvert who struggled with his controlling father during his early and teenage years. Hansen began to hunt and practice archery, and he frequently sought solace in those activities. He joined the United States Army Reserve in 1957, but was released after a year of service. Later on, he was employed at a Pocahontas Police Academy as an assistant drill teacher. He started seeing a younger woman there, and in mid-1960, they got married. Hansen was jailed on December 7, 1960, for setting fire to a school bus garage in Pocahontas County, Iowa, in retaliation for his lack of popularity in high school. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison and spent 20 months at Anamosa State Penitentiary. He was diagnosed with manic depression with sporadic episodes of schizophrenia when he was incarcerated. Hansen had an infantile personality and was fixated on seeking vengeance on those he believed had harmed him, according to the psychiatrist who made the diagnosis. While Hansen was in prison, his wife filed for divorce. Hansen spent the following few years in jail on multiple occasions for minor stealing. He and his second wife, whom he had married in 1963 and had 2 children with, relocated to Anchorage, Alaska in 1967. He established multiple local hunting records and was well liked by his neighbors in Anchorage. Hansen was arrested twice in December 1971, first for kidnapping and attempting to essay an unnamed housewife, and later for essaying an unnamed sex worker. In the former case, the essay charge against the sex worker was withdrawn as part of a plea deal, and he entered a no-contest plea to assault with a deadly weapon. After spending 6 months of his 5-year jail sentence, Hansen was released to a halfway house and put on a work release program. After being caught stealing a chainsaw from a store in 1976, Hansen entered a guilty plea to larceny. He was ordered to undergo psychiatric treatment for his bipolar disorder and given a 5-year prison sentence. He was freed after the Alaska Supreme Court lowered his sentence. It is thought that Hansen started murdering in 1972. He allegedly stalked a woman to find out her habits, then picked her up in his car and drove her to his house where he essayed her. He may have then taken the woman to a remote location and hunted her like a lion before shooting or stabbing her. Many of the women Hansen killed were teens and some were prostitutes. Authorities suspect that 18-year-old Celia Van Zanten was Hansen's first murder victim. Van Zanten was abducted on December 22, 1971, and after fleeing from her kidnapper, she froze to death in the wilderness. Her body was found on December 25. She was kidnapped 3 days after Hansen assaulted the sex worker for which he was imprisoned. Although there are some parallels between Van Zanten's kidnapping and Hansen's methods of execution, there is no concrete proof that he was involved in the attack, and he also denied any involvement. Cindy Paulson, then 17 years old, accepted Hansen's $200 offer for oral sex on June 13, 1983. He then pulled out a revolver and drove her to his house. He took her hostage there and tortured and essayed her. She later told authorities that Hansen napped on a couch nearby after securing her by the neck to a post in his basement. He told her that he planned to take her out to his cabin, a cottage in the Neck River region of the Matanuska-Susitna Valley that is only reachable by boat or bush plane. He drove her to Merrillfield Airport. When Hansen was busy filling the cockpit of his aircraft, a Piper PA-18 Super Cub, Paulson, who huddled in the backseat of the car with her wrists shackled in front of her body, sensed an opportunity to flee. She climbed out of the back seat, opened the driver's side door, and rushed toward the neighboring 6th Avenue while Hansen's back was turned. As proof that she had been in Hansen's vehicle, Paulson subsequently told police that she had left her blue sneakers on the back seat of the sedan's passenger side floor. Paulson made it to 6th Avenue and was able to flag down a passing truck while Hansen panicked and chased her. Concerned by Paulson's messy look, the driver, Robert Yount, pulled over and scooped her up. She hopped out of the truck and hurried inside the machine after he took her there. Yount went on to work, where he contacted the police to report the event, while she begged the cashier to call her boyfriend at the Big Timber Motel. Officers from the Anchorage Police Department, APD, were informed that Paulson had taken a taxi to the Big Timber Motel when they arrived at the machine. When APD got there, they discovered Paulson alone in room 110, still in handcuffs. After being brought to APD headquarters, she gave a description of the offender. When questioned by the officers, Hansen refuted Paulson's allegation, claiming that she was attempting to cause him difficulty since he refused to comply with her demands for extortion. Hansen used this justification on previous occasions, but despite his history of legal troubles, authorities did not view him as a serious suspect because of his modest attitude, his modest job as a baker, and an alibi from his friend John Henning. A team led by Alaska State Troopers Detective Glenn Flott had been looking into the finding of multiple bodies in and around Anchorage Seward and the Matanuska-Susitna Valley region. Construction workers discovered the first body close to Eklutna Road. Investigators have named the body Eklutna Annie, although it has never been identified. Joanna Messina's body was found in a gravel pit close to Seward later that year, while Sherry Morrow's remains were found in a shallow burial close to the Net River in 1982. Flott thought that the same person had killed all three ladies. In order to get assistance creating an offender profile based on the three recovered bodies, Flott reached out to Special Agent John Douglas of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Douglas believed that the murderer would be a seasoned hunter with low self-esteem, a history of female rejection, and the need to save souvenirs of his killings, including jewelry from a victim. He also implied that the attacker might stutter. Flott used this profile to look into potential possibilities until he found Hansen, who had a plane and suited the criteria. Flott and the APD obtained a warrant to search Hansen's home, cars, and plane with the help of Paulson's testimony and Douglas's profile. On October 27, 1983, investigators found a variety of weaponry, including a Ruger Mini-14 semi-automatic rifle in a corner hideaway of Hansen's attic, along with jewelry belonging to several of the missing women. Also discovered, concealed behind Hansen's headboard, was an aeronautical chart with 37 tiny X symbols on it. Many of these marks corresponded to the locations of previously identified bodies. Others were located at the areas highlighted on Hansen's murder map. Hansen initially tried to deny the evidence discovered in his house, but he eventually started blaming the women and made an effort to defend his behavior. He finally admitted a series of assaults on Alaskan women beginning in 1971 and confessed to every piece of evidence as it was shown to him. Unlike several of the victims who led to Hansen's discovery, his first victims were young women or girls, mostly between the ages of 16 and 19, and they weren't sex workers. Although there is evidence that suggests Hansen killed at least 21 female victims, he is known to have essayed and abused more than 30 Alaskan women and killed at least 17 of them, ranging in age from 16 to 41. On December 22, 1971, 18-year-old Celia Beth Van Zanten was at home with two of her three older brothers. Along with their older brother and cousin, the three of them lived in a home on Nick Avenue near Northern Lights Boulevard in South Anchorage. Her folks lived in another Anchorage house. Beth walked a few blocks from her home to the Buy-Low grocery in the late evening. She departed at 8:30 p.m. as the Buy-Low closed at 9 p.m. There was a witness who saw Beth go towards the Buy-Low between 8:45 and 9 before dark. A neighbor reported seeing her on Northern Lights Boulevard at approximately 9 p.m. She never managed to get to the supermarket. 2 days later, she was reported missing. Her body was found near Anchorage in Chugach State Park on December 25, 1971. She had been chained and assayed, and the knife had been slashed across her chest. She had died from exposure after being thrown, still alive, into a steep ravine. She tried to climb back up the slope, but her restraints prevented her from doing so, according to forensic findings. Hansen denied culpability for her death and the murders of other women who were not involved in sex work, despite being accused of killing her due to an X on his aircraft map. On July 7, 1973, Megan Siobhan Emmerich, then 17 years old, disappeared from Seward, Alaska. At the boarding school Seward Skill Center, she was last seen leaving a laundry room in a dorm. All of Megan's belongings, including her ID, were abandoned. Her roommate searched for her for 3 days before calling the police. Although Hansen acknowledged being in Seward on the day Megan disappeared, he also denied killing her to the authorities. He is believed to be at fault because of an X on his aircraft map in the Seward region. Hansen reportedly told the former prisoner that he did kill and bury Megan after taking her to a cabin in the Seward region that could only be reached by boat. Mary Kathleen Thill, 22, vanished from Seward, Alaska on July 5, 1975. She lived on Lower Point Road while her husband was gone working on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. A friend drove her into town and dropped her off at a bakery in the area. She was spotted by another acquaintance near a waterfall on Lowell Point Road between 1:30 and 2 p.m. Since then, no one has seen or heard from her. Although he denied killing Thill, Hansen admitted to being in Seward on the day of her disappearance. Again, suspicion of him was heightened by an X on his aircraft map near Resurrection Bay. A former inmate claims that Hansen acknowledged killing her and throwing her body in Resurrection Bay. On July 21, 1980, the bones of Eklutna Annie were found buried in a forested area 1 mile south of South Eklutna Lake Road in Eklutna, Anchorage, Alaska, adjacent to a power line. After she attempted to escape from his vehicle, Hansen confessed to stabbing her in the back. He said she was his first murder victim and that she was either a prostitute or a topless dancer. Troops believe that Eklutna Annie may have traveled to Alaska from California, even though he stated that she may have come from Kodiak, Alaska. When her body was discovered in a small grave close to Eklutna Lake Road, it had already been mostly eaten by wildlife. On May 19, 1980, Joanna Messina, a 24-year-old local dancer who was employed in Seward, Alaska, went out to dinner with Hansen. Hansen claims that things were going well until Messina asked for money in exchange for relations. Hansen drove her and her dog to a far-off location by the Snow River because he would not pay and would not let her go. After striking her with a gun, he shot the dog once and her twice. He carried Messina's body to a neighboring gravel pit and covered her with gravel. He threw the gun into the Snow River and the dog and Messina's possessions into the woods. Her decomposing body was discovered on July 8, 1980, after wildlife had eviscerated it. Roxanne Eastland, who was 24 at the time, disappeared on June 28, 1980. For the past 2 weeks, she and her boyfriend had been staying at the Budget Motel on Spanard Road in Anchorage, Alaska. She was supposed to meet an unidentified male downtown on 4th Avenue that day. Since then, no one has seen or heard from her. Her body was never found, despite Hansen's admission of murder. On September 6, 1980, Lisa Futrell met Hansen at the nightclub in Anchorage where she worked and was later abducted by him. The 49-year-old's 2 younger housemates reported her missing after she did not come home after her shift at the club on September 7. On May 9, 1984, her body was found buried south of the Old Nick Arm Bridge near a gravel pit. On November 17, 1981, 23-year-old dancer Sherry Morrow informed friends that she was meeting with a photographer who had offered her $300 for nude photos. On September 12, 1982, hunters found a shallow grave on the banks of the Nick River. The remains were used to identify Morrow, who had been reported missing a year earlier. She was shot 3 times in the back, and cartridges found near the body showed that the rounds were fired with a Ruger Mini 14 hunting rifle. One peculiarity was that, despite the fact that the body was discovered completely clothed, there were no bullet wounds in the garments, indicating that Sherry had been shot naked and had been dressed after passing away before being buried. Andrea Mona Altieri, 24, was last observed getting into a taxi on December 2, 1981, to travel to Anchorage's Boniface Mall. She was going to have a photo session with a male. Several of Altieri's belongings were found when police searched Hansen's home. Hansen said that after meeting her, he kidnapped her, handcuffed and blindfolded her, and threatened her with a gun. They drove to a service road off Palmer Highway near the Neck Arm Bridge. There, he essayed her. She retaliated, and he killed her. After stealing Altieris's necklace, he tied a duffel bag to the woman, weighted it with rocks, and threw her into the river from the bridge. Her remains were never located. 23-year-old exotic dancer Sue Luna willingly accepted a $300 payment from a nightclub customer for a photo shoot. She met Hansen at a cafe parking lot on May 26, 1982. Luna was reported missing the next day. She had been kidnapped, murdered, and buried in the Neck River by Hansen. The day she was found was April 24, 1984. Hansen claims that while she was stripping naked, he made her go into the forest and hunt her like an animal. Luna had been killed by gunfire. On April 25, 1984, 19-year-old Robin Pelkey's partial skeleton remains were discovered at Horseshoe Lake in Palmer, Alaska. She had been shot and stabbed. The victim's involvement in sex work is unknown. She was referred to as Horseshoe Harriet prior to her identification, and forensic genealogy was used to ascertain her identity in October 2021. Pelkey lived in Anchorage, Alaska in the early 1980s and disappeared on July 19, 1983. Deline Sugar Renee Frey, a 22-year-old former Anchorage, Alaska resident, was not immediately reported missing after she was last seen in March 1983. Hansen kidnapped her and killed her. On August 20, 1985, a pilot testing new tires found her dead on a sandbar in the Neck River. She was buried as Jane Doe in an Anchorage cemetery. Only in 1989, after an Alaska state trooper recognized her jewelry in a case file photo, was she identified. Hansen gave Paula Goulding, a 30-year-old dancer in Anchorage, money on April 25, 1983, and then abducted her. According to Hansen, she fought with him and tried to flee when he drove her to his plane and they arrived at a remote location. He killed her with a gun when she ran away. She was found buried in a small grave on the Neck River on September 2, 1983. Although she had sustained injuries to her back, it's plausible that she was shot while still nude and then dressed before being buried because her clothes were intact. On June 13, 1983, 17-year-old Cindy Paulson met Hansen. Hansen agreed to pay for relations, but then he took out his revolver and abducted her. Before he took her to his airplane, she was brought to his house, handcuffed, and essayed. Hansen threatened to kill Paulson if she fled, leaving her alone in his car as he started boarding his jet. She ran away. Robert Yount, a passing vehicle, picked her up there. After escorting Paulson to a secure area, he called the police. Around the same time, a security guard saw some suspicious activity and took note of Hansen's car's license plate, even though he didn't make contact. Paulson was found and questioned by police over the assault. Dancer Malai Larson, 28, was reported missing from Anchorage, Alaska on July 10, 1981. Her body was found in a parking lot near the Neck Arm Bridge on April 24, 1984. On March 25, 1983, 22-year-old dancer Teresa Watson was last seen in Anchorage. "I'm meeting a man who would give me $300 for an hour or two of company," she told her roommate. Hansen kidnapped and killed her at Scenic Lake. Because the ground in the area was still frozen, he was unable to bury her. He left her where she died. She was found on April 26, 1984. The last sighting of 24-year-old dancer Angela Federn occurred in February 1983. It wasn't until May that she was reported missing. She was abducted and killed by Hansen. On April 26, 1984, Federn's body was discovered on a tiny lake close to Figure 8 Lake. Tamara Pedersen, 20, worked as a dancer at a nightclub. She claimed to have been given money to pose for photos in a phone conversation on August 7, 1982, the last time her family heard from her. She was slain after being abducted. It wasn't until Hansen came clean and indicated the location of her body on a map that she was found. The body was discovered 1.5 miles from the Old Neck Bridge on April 29, 1984. Hansen was charged with several firearms violations, assault, kidnapping, theft, and insurance fraud after his arrest. He bought his plane with the money from the last charge, which was connected to a claim he made to the insurance company regarding the alleged theft of certain trophies. He stated throughout the trial that he neglected to notify the insurance that he had later found the trophies in his lawn. After ballistics tests revealed a match between bullets recovered from the crime scenes and Hansen's gun, he entered into a plea agreement. In exchange for serving his sentence in a federal prison and avoiding media attention, he entered a guilty plea to the 4 murders for which the authorities had proof: Morrow, Messina, Golding, and Eklutna Annie, and gave information about his other victims. His involvement in figuring out the markings on his aviation map and identifying the remains of his victims was another requirement of the plea deal. Hansen admitted that he occasionally let a possible victim go if she persuaded him she would not report him to the police, corroborating the police account of how the women were kidnapped. According to him, he started murdering in the early 1970s. 12 of the 17 grave sites that Hansen showed investigators in and around south-central Alaska were unknown to authorities. 3 dots in Resurrection Bay, close to Seward, were among the few marks on his chart that he was unwilling to discuss. 2 of these marks are thought by authorities to be the graves of Megan Emmerich and Mary Thill, whom Hansen has denied killing. The police exhumed the bones of 12 of the likely 21 to 37 victims and gave them back to their families. Hansen received a 461-year prison term without the possibility of parole. In Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, he was initially detained at the United States Penitentiary, Lewisburg. He was sent back to Alaska in 1988 and held for a short time at the Juneau-based Lemon Creek Correctional Center. Prior to his transfer to the Anchorage Correctional Complex in May 2014, due to health concerns, he was also detained at the Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward. At the age of 75, Hansen passed away at Alaska Regional Hospital in Anchorage on August 21, 2014, from natural causes associated with persisting medical issues. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye-bye.